Thurisaz, the third rune of the Elder Futhark, a symbol of raw forces, chaos, danger, and the power to defend or destroy. Its name comes from the Thursar, the giants of Norse memory, beings of primal power older than the gods themselves. To carve Thurisaz was not to invite comfort, it was to acknowledge a gate, the point where order meets wildness, where energy must be directed or it will devour. Thurisaz literally means thorn, and also refers to giant. In early Germanic life, a thorn could protect or wound. An edge of thorns marked a boundary, kept predators at bay, but could also injure the careless. Likewise, the giants of myth were not simply villains. They were forces of chaos in nature, frost, fire, storm. Unchecked, they could destroy. Engaged with wisdom, they could become source of strength. Thurisaz marks that threshold, a point of confrontation, a gate where one must choose to act with discipline. Thurisaz points us at the place where pressure meets control, the gate where raw force presses against order. Psychologically, that gate is everywhere. In our chest when we feel rage rising, in our throat when we're about to snap. Thurisaz names the nervous system's moment of escalation, the split second when impulse becomes action, and asks us to treat that moment as the work itself. Modern psychology describes these moments in terms of arousal and regulation. A threat, real or perceived, pushes the body into surge. Heart rate, muscle tension, narrowed attention. That surge is not immortal. It's adaptive. The problem is what happens next. Without regulation, surge becomes reaction, aggression, freeze, flight. Thurisaz encodes the practice of gating that surge, of converting automatic reactivity into deliberate response. In clinical terms, this is impulse control and emotional regulation. In older terms, it is standing at the torn edge and choosing whether to let the stranger through. In older terms, it is standing at the torn edge and choosing whether to let the stranger through. There's also an interpersonal layer. Thurisaz deals with boundaries. A hedge of thorns protects a field, it also wounds the careless. People who lack boundaries are easily plundered. People who over-fortify become isolated. Psychologically, Thurisaz points to the calibration between permeability and protection. When to allow input, when to refuse it, and how to hold a clear edge without becoming brittle. This is not a moral prescription, it is a skill set, noticing arousal, naming the fear or anger, and selecting a calibrated action that preserves you without escalating the world. Thurisaz also surface the shadow of force. The giants of the sagas can be seen as projections of power we neither fully trust nor fully tame. In the psyche, that corresponds to the aspects we deny, the aggressive, the lustful, the ruthless, which then appear in distorted forms of our life, passive aggression, sudden eruptions, chronic resentment. The work Thurisaz offers is not to excise that power, but to recognize it, to stop projecting it outward and to learn to point it where it serves you, rather than destroys you. Finally, there is a developmental dimension, tolerance for discomfort. Meeting Thurisaz requires practicing the pause, the short window between stimulus and reaction where awareness can intervene. Psychotherapies, from cognitive behavioral skills to modern somatic approaches, train that window. Slow the breath, widen the flame, choose your response. That pause is the rune's practical gift. It turns a thorn into a gate you control. If you reflect briefly, where in your life are you most likely to be rushed past the gate? To act before you choose. That's where Thurisaz is asking to be met. How do we use this rune in modern life? Number 1, identify your thorns. What protects you? What wounds you? Where are your personal boundaries too weak or too rigid? Number 2, pause before action. Thurisaz teaches the power of the moment before striking. Train yourself to stop, breathe, and choose. Number 3, channel raw energy. Physical exercise, martial arts, cold exposure, creative risk, these are modern ways of meeting and transforming primal energy. Number 4, protect what matters. Use your will to guard your time, your values, your focus. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates you control. In the rune poems, Thurs, giant, is linked with hardship, anger, and destructive force. A force that causes pain, disturbance, and threat. This reminds us that the rune was never regarded as harmless. It signified danger as much as protection. Archaeological finds also show Thurisaz used in protective contexts. Carved into weapons, tools, or boundary markers, it acted as a sign to ward off hostility. On amulets, it could stand as a defensive rune, a thorn against enemies seen and unseen. But it was always double-edged. Like the thorn itself, it could pierce the hand that wielded it. Later traditions warn that misuse of Thurisaz invites aggression, chaos, or eternal turmoil. It was not a rune to invoke casually, but one to approach with discipline and clarity of intent. Thurisaz is not gentle. It is the rune of confrontation, threshold, and power under control. It reminds us that before every act there is a moment of choice, and that primal energy, when met with awareness, becomes a guardian instead of a destroyer.